Yep, that one, yep.
Is this working? Okay. Good morning. Now you can hear me. All right. So my name is Iuri. I'm the lead developer of Embark. For some context, Embark was this is the first Ethereum framework. It was released back in 2015. Is now 3 years old or so. As that, it had 70 iterations. It introduced a lot of things that now we take for granted, from creating private blockchains for development purposes, to RPC simulators, to smart contracts, testing smart contracts in JavaScript, among other things. This is the Embark dashboard. This was introduced in DEFCON 2 back in version 2.0. It's kind of representative of the framework, as it's meant to be powerful, but at the same time easy to use. So here you can see on the top, I'm afraid it's not very readable, but on the top, you can at a glance look at the state of the contracts. Where are they deployed? Is there any errors? You have the logs on the bottom. There's also a console that you can interact with. And then on the right, crucially, you have services, which includes things like Whisper and IPFS. And the reason for that is that Embark is very focused on developing true decentralized applications and not just UIs for smart contracts. Although if you want to do it just for that, you can just as well. And as many of you might know, for a long time, Embark was pretty much a sort of one-man operation, which basically consisted of me waking up at 5 a.m. to work on this before going to my day job at a time, plus some community contributors. So I never really had the resources to lead the framework what I really wanted it to go, since I just lacked at the time the resources. However, I'm very happy to announce that that has changed, since Status is now supporting Embark. So, and so a big thank you to Status. And our team now has grown to 6 developers working full-time on the framework. And we have been recently hard at work at the next version, which is version 3.0, which is available today. So under the hood, a lot of things has changed. It's talking about thousands and thousands of lines of code that were rewritten and re-architectured. So we have a much more solid framework now. And I'm going to be talking about some of the new features, and also re-emphasizing some of the older things in case some of you might not be familiar with. So of course, we support Solidity, but in this version, we're also adding support for Viper out of the box, as well as Bamboo by using a plugin. And you can use them side by side. So you can create say, ERC20 token in Viper, and then interact with the DAO written in Solidity, for example. And it can use all the Embark's functionality that you would expect, including also testing and so on. Then the simplest usage of Embark is when you configure a contract, you typically use the contract's JSON and you specify the arguments. It used to be that you would have to pass an array of arguments. You can still do that, but we added support that you can just name the arguments, which makes it a bit more readable. And before, the contracts used to be available in the global namespace, and we changed that so you can actually specifically import the contract. And you can see here the syntax. This is a Web3 GS 1.0 syntax, which is what Embark uses by default, since that's the future. However, if you want, you can still use the old syntax by changing a certain configuration. Then, in Embark, the way it works essentially with the contract's configuration is that you describe the relationship between your contracts, and then Embark will take care of deploying the contracts in the right way to satisfy that description. So here it's a very simple example that you have a DAO that's dependent on a token. So with this type of configuration, Embark will know that, okay, I need to deploy a token first, and then I'll take the address and pass that to the DAO. There's a lot of options that it's just not possible to go in a short talk. But we have things like the gas costs are all taken care of automatically, but you can take care of that manually if you so wish. You have on deploy and after deploy actions, which is other commands that you can do when a contract deploys or after all contracts are deployed. In some cases, you don't actually want to deploy the contract. You can create multiple instances of the same contract. So let's say you can have a token contract, and then you launch, say, 3 tokens that happen to use the same code. And then the other options, in case the contract is already deployed, you can just specify the address, which is useful for if you are using the main chain or the testnet. Because the relationships are described in such manner, you can actually run this command called Embark Graph, and it will automatically create kind of like a ER model of your contracts and how they are related, which is really useful to gauge at how complex or simple your project is. You can also specify the versions on the fly. And so typically, when using most frameworks, if there's, say, a new version of Solidity, you actually have to wait for a new version of the framework to be able to use that new version of Solidity. But now you can actually just specify what is the version that you want, what is the version of Web3, also the IPFS API, and Embark will automatically, for that specific dApp, will automatically download and install it. We're also introducing support for importing directly from URIs. So in this case, you can specify a file directly from Git, GitHub, or HTTP. You can do this in contract config. You can also just install, if you want, in this case, if you want to use OpenZeppelin, which is quite popular, you can just install the package and import directly the package. But you can also even skip that step and import directly from the GitHub. And note that this is not a simple, naive download. It's smart enough to check if the contract has dependencies and download those dependencies, and then presents all of that in a consistent way to the compiler. So it just works. Other highlight is decentralized storage. So the idea here is that Embark abstracts a lot of the APIs that you have to use to deal with decentralized storages and decentralized communications, such as Whisper, so that if you need to switch the component that you are using because you are looking for different trade-offs, you can do that easily without really changing your code. So there's all this functionality. You can easily save data, get data, upload a file, get to URL, and that can be configured, and you typically configure with the provider. So here, in one case, the provider is IPFS, the other case it's Swarm. And so it's switching from one to the other is just a matter of changing the configuration. And you can also do this on a per environment basis. So typically the default, you are just using localhost because you're developing locally. But then when you actually deploy to the LiveNet, you specify the host as one of the typical gateways. So IPFS is typically in Fura, and there's the Swarm gateway from the foundation for Swarm. And you can also upload the dApp to IPFS or Swarm, and that's a very simple command. You just do Embark upload IPFS, and that will build the application. So we'll deploy the contracts if necessary, build it, and then deploy it to IPFS. And in the end, we'll tell you what URLs you can go to get your application, or other people can go to check your application. And Embark, I supported this for a while, but we're now really supporting Swarm just as we were supporting before IPFS, and we'll continue to do that in a consistent basis, since Swarm is one of the main components of Ethereum as a platform. Finally, but not least, Embark also has a big emphasis on plugin support. So everything in Embark can be extended or modified through plugins. And plugins are actually quite easy to do. So if there's something that the framework does that you're not really happy with, or maybe you want to add some action or feature, it's quite simple to extend it to be able to implement the functionality that you want. And things like Bamboo are actually implemented this way. It's actually a plugin that adds the support for the Bamboo programming language to Embark. Right now we support Swarm and IPFS, but in the future, we can support other decentralized storage. 10 years from now, maybe even made safe. So it's kind of future-proof. So installing plugin is quite easy. You pretty much just do npm install and then add the plugin to the configuration, and then you have the plugin available. With the plugins that are available right now, or at least some of them, are including Solium, which is the linter, the status, so you can more easily create dApps for status. There's the Remix plugin and the Embark Bamboo plugin. At Status, we're also going to do bounties to create plugins for Embark, and in the upcoming days there'll be more details about that. And finally, we have the website Embark at embark.status.em. This is available now. Embark 3.0 is available now. And thank you.
Oh.